All right, I'd like to thank you all for coming. There is a couple ground rules since we're in here. Everybody's got to get up, state your name to the microphone, tell what board or commission you are. Anybody who speaks from the public has to say who they are and their address. Okay? So for the record, we have John Staszewski, Ted Quinlan, Mike Manjos, Debbie Duchess, Debbie Heim from the Board of Finance. Oh, the same thing. Debbie Heim from the Town Council. We have Alan Veglavella from the Board of Education, Amy Primack from the Board of Education, Dee Dee Martin from Town Council, and the lone wolf back there, Jeff Gutman from the Board of Education. What we're going to do tonight, obviously first, is Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, what we're going to do, before we get input from our elected officials, we'll start with Board of Education, Town Council, Board of Finance. Obviously, the budget went down by a slim amount, but it still went down. We all felt the last meeting that it was a great budget, but adjustments had to be made. Some wanted more, some wanted less. I heard a lot of things at the polls. I took the opportunity to spend as much time at the polls listening to people, and a lot of people, there are people that can't afford the increase, I get that. There are a lot of people that were really misunderstanding of what the Board of Education can and cannot do with its mandates, especially Common Core. So Mr. Agassiz is going to talk about that. And there are wage and adjustments that have to be, that are mandated between anything from insurance to medical costs. They're all going up. We've had a very good run getting people to understand that, but people just don't like the mandates. They feel that the state is over-mandating us. We can cut as long as we want, cut services, cut people. It's not going to cut the mandates. So everybody has to understand that. But when I have parents really upset about the Common Core, I know Jim and I have talked about this, it's just not going away. It's a federal and state mandate. There's nothing we can do about it. If we like it or not, it doesn't matter. But Mr. Augustine, if you can speak on that.
I sure can. Good evening, everyone. Steve brought up the Common Core. Common Core initiative, what we need to understand about that is that it's a set of standards. We in public education have had a set of standards for the past probably 30 years, well, one set or another, okay? So standards, teaching to standards is nothing new. The Common Core standards are different. They have high expectations for all students. We have pamphlets with all of the standards. If anyone is interested in looking at them, I'd be happy to show them to you. I can tell you as a parent and as an educator that there's not a standard on those and the Connecticut Common Core standards that I wouldn't want my children to rise to, okay? What really causes the problem with the Common Core standards is that people get those confused with the SBAC testing. That's the national mandate that schools are tested for proficiency on those set of standards. And people are a bit upset about the SBAC testing. It's replacing the CMT and the CAP test. The other thing that gets thrown into the mix is a conversation about the tying of the results of that SBAC testing to teacher evaluation. And so there's a lot of sentiment out there against that component. But the standards alone are the standards, and they're great standards. We've studied them intensely for the past 4 years as we've built them into our curriculum. So they're here. There was actually, a hearing at the state level about doing something, repealing or putting a moratorium on the Connecticut standards, on the Common Core standards. I said to Senator Kelly and Representative Hovey at the Board of Education meeting, if you did that, I wouldn't know what to do with our kids. There would be no standards to teach to because the old CMT CAP standards that we were measuring against are no longer in existence. All of our teachers are implementing the Common Core now, and we're doing well with it. So there's no stopping this bus. The wheels are turning, and we're going there. So the Common Core. Now, if you want to talk about unfunded mandates, okay, the teacher evaluation thing is an unfunded mandate. Last year, all of our administrators in the district spent 7 or 8 days in training. Now that didn't cost us anything because these are all salaried people, okay? But there was a hidden cost because while they were 7 or 8 days in the state training, we weren't getting Town of Monroe work done, you see? So there's a kind of an unfunded mandate cost to the district. That happens, and it happens on a fairly routine basis in education. There are a lot of masters that we have to play to in order to fulfill our obligations to both the state and the federal government. In regards to the Board of Education budget, I made a promise to this community when I got hired here that I was going to prepare honest and transparent budgets, and I think that I have done that to date. We have come off the heels of some very lean budgets. We have been cutting staff regularly throughout the year starting in 2005. This budget includes 32 positions, teaching positions, that we've eliminated since 2005. So any argument that you hear out there about not shrinking our staff as we shrink in enrollment is just not true. We've lost 800 students over that time. We've lost 32 teachers over that time. If you do the math, that's 25 students per teacher. So for every time we tick down about 25 kids, we cut a staff member, okay? And we will continue to do so all the way out until 2022, when our population is going to stabilize at about 2,400 students. And it'll remain flat for a couple of years, and then it'll start ticking back up again. So any conception that people have about that is just untrue. There's another bit of information out there these days about the movement of the instructional leaders to the administrative contract. Let me explain to you. 3 years ago, we had 10 department chairs in the district at the high school level. Those department chairs had evaluation responsibilities. Okay, they helped with teacher evaluation. When the new law, the new model, teacher evaluation model came out and we became aware of it, we knew there was no way that we could implement this new model with those department chairs because the law prevented us from using them because they're in the same bargaining unit as the people they would be evaluating, okay? So right there is the problem, okay? But what we needed to do was figure out how could we orchestrate a way to make them, take them out of the teacher's bargaining unit and put them into the administrative bargaining unit. We did not create new positions. The $800,000 round numbers that you're hearing get thrown around as new positions is not true, okay? We took the department chairs, and we only took 8 of them, by the way. We eliminated 2 department chair positions in this process, okay? And we increased their work year by 10 days for all of them, so we got 80 more work days out of this movement. And it cost us a grand total of $3,000. But what we did was we took them out of the teacher's bargaining unit and moved that $800,000 from that account to the administrative account, okay? They reside in the administrator's contract in a very low tier, okay? Their salaries did not increase more than $1,000 or $2, okay, for their added responsibilities. And so anything you hear about the creation of all these administrative positions is just not true. In fact, you could make an argument that we reduced the number of administrators that were operating in the district because there were 10 department heads and now there are 8 instructional leaders with 10 additional work days for all of them. The budget, as I started here this evening, I said, I promised the community to prepare honest and transparent budgets, and I believe I've done that. There's a risk that you run when you do that, okay? And it's a big risk because When you go out and say, this is what we need in order to operate the district, and the referendum fails, then you start to do damage. We have already begun the process through the past 2 referenda to do damage. We are cutting positions already, okay? We're cutting additional staffing positions. I am looking under every nook and cranny in the budget to find ways. Just to give you a silly example, I discontinued our membership to NASDAQ, the New England District Commission. That was the firm that was used in the organization that hired me, that helped the board in hiring me into this thing. Discontinuing our membership there saves us $4,000. I discontinued it. That's how fine we're picking to get this budget number down. We're really trying to find every single cent that we can find to keep it as low as possible. But if we continue to have defeated referenda, then where do we go? We have to go into programming, because that's where the money is. $32 million of our budget goes to paying the 512 people that are employed by the district. So you're only going into the salary account, which means you're either going to raise class size or you're going to discontinue services. I'm studying right now. Gabby has been working on some numbers for us. You know, if we increase the pay per play cost by $25, that could bring us in $26,000. If we raise it $50, we can get $52,000. But, you know, honestly, folks, you know, it's shifting one tax burden that we all share to a tax burden that only a few share. They're already paying close to $300 a head in order to participate in sports. So, you know, I'm reluctant to do that, but if the budgets continue to get cut, I'm going to have to continue to look at staff. I'm going to have to look at increasing, you know, fees, rental fees for the facilities, you know, things of that nature that I want to do. I really would rather prepare this budget, get you the best number I can, do the least damage that we can over the upcoming, you know, next referendum, and move forward. We have accomplished much in the past year or two. We have 2 schools, and this is a rare event, folks. We have 2 schools now that are named schools of distinction in the state of Connecticut. Okay, Massac High School is one of 10 schools that's labeled as a school of distinction. I mean, that's an incredible result for the money that we're spending on education. Monroe L, this is their 2nd year in a row. Jockey Hollow was named as a school of excellence by the state of Connecticut. And our other 2 are missing that bar by this much, okay? By this much. So we have some really high-performing students, some really high-performing schools. The bang for the buck that the town of Monroe is getting for their educational system is extraordinary. It's extraordinary. I wish my kids went here, okay? They've long since graduated high school, but looking back, I would have put my kids through this district any day of the week. That's attractive to people. I drive around town, I see for sale signs out there on the streets, and I know the families, when they're coming in, they're shopping. They're looking for, what kind of a school district are we? How are we performing? And we are performing in an exceptional fashion. I just hope that this diversity that we have, or division that we have in getting the budgets passed, can go away and let us perform at our optimum and give you the best bang for your buck that we could possibly give you. We have roof projects going on. We had security projects all of last year that we have to finish up. We have to do some work still at Jockey Hollow and at Massac High School. You look at our buildings today. They're looking really sharp, okay? Our custodians are taking pride in the fact that we have now begun to get these buildings back in shape and get them sound and leak-proof and safe for all of our kids. Thank you.
All right. Obviously you all know my feeling on the budget. This is pretty much the third best, lowest budget we've ever presented in this town since there's been first selectmen. And as you hear, Jim was the biggest cut of that. We really are doing the best we possibly can. We're getting some progress with our roads, with our buildings, and we do have a plan to move it forward. It's all about education of this budget. Again, standing out there, and I put a challenge out on Facebook and Twitter, and I got only 50 responses. Going to print them out, but I didn't want the names to be seen because a lot of people are very confidential about how we're going to spend their money. And there are people that just didn't understand certain things that Jim just said. There are certain people that don't understand that, when the bus bar moves out, DPW is going to get a new building. The funds are already in there to renovate that building. I mean, we're trying to give our employees the best possible bang for the buck we have to, with the less increase we've ever had. So we're doing a lot of great things, and we'll start off with the Board of Education. Now, what's going to happen is I did read a few things on the blogs. This is an input-only meeting. This isn't a discussion back and forth. The budget is the discussion. The people's vote is the discussion. So we're going to hear the input from the elected officials, then the public, and again, we're going to start off with the Board of Education.
Can I just say one more word before we go there, Steve? One other comment I'd like to make is that over the past 2 years, we have worked hard at developing the relationship with the Board of Finance under Mike's leadership, the Town Council, the First Selectman's Office. We start the process of building our budget in October, okay? This is a long, long process. And Mike and his team have questioned every single line item. The instructional leader discussion, for instance, Mike, how many times now has this come up? Okay.
A lot of spreadsheets.
A lot of spreadsheets. These things have been talked through ad nauseum, okay, over the course of the past, 6 months, okay? So I find it hard to believe that this misinformation is still out there.
Still up.
Anyway.
And on that too, and there's a certain, somebody came to the polls, they were 10 minutes late, they told us that we're ramrodding the budget through. The budget is charter driven. It's the same first Tuesday every year, then it's 3 weeks, then it's 2 weeks, then it's 2 weeks, then it's 2 weeks, then it's 2 weeks. It's charter mandated. We're not ramrodding anything through. Every meeting has been very public. We are pretty much honored, and the town council does the same thing, but the Board of Finance, each member sitting in front, come into town hall on a daily basis. I was even, up till today, talking to our superintendent at a Rotary meeting this morning, because we're both Rotarians, and if you want to come, 7:30 breakfast, it's a great time. But, it is service above self. These volunteers have given more time than I've ever seen any volunteers give, including myself when I was back on town council and Board of Finance. They're in here, Carl, Heidi, Gabby, how many times are they in your office? They ask the tough questions. There are residents here. They are your coaches, your neighbors. I mean, we're all residents here. But the bottom line is, we put out some great budgets. There has been some misconceptions. But now it's time to hear it from the elected officials and the public. So we'd like to start off from the Board of Education. Jeff? If you can, just because it is being recorded.
Jeffrey Gutman, Board of Ed member. First off, Jim, you said something very interesting just now about education is a very important part of how people see a town, how people moving into a town with kids. I know when I moved here back in '93, my wife was pregnant with our first, and we looked into the education back then, and Monroe was a great education back then, and education is a big part of it. That's what, a lot of towns are kept alive because they have a great education, and having 2 schools of distinction means a lot. That'll help our values. Once the economy turns around, hopefully our values will go back up to where they were, 4 or 5 years ago. And I'm not saying that we should just allow the education budget to do whatever we want. But I know when I came onto the Board of Ed, I was very fortunate to come on with Jim. I didn't work with any other superintendent. I came from town council. And I came on, And I told people, I'm not coming on to worry about what you're being taught in school. That's not my job. The curriculum is given to us by the state and by the federal government. I came on for the money. I came on to see where the money's going. And I can say without any reservation that Jim, the way he leads, the way he does the budget, is exactly what he said, line by line. And looking for places where we don't need to spend money. Where other superintendents in the past have just spent and spent and spent, and it happens in every town. I can honestly say that when he put out our first budget, it was lean. And the stuff that we took out is stuff that we needed, but we can live without it for now, but we're definitely going to need it in the future. So our next cuts are going to be stuff that we definitely do need, but we're just going to have to live without for now. So when everybody's going back to vote, you have to take into consideration is what we're losing. Not just, okay, we're saving another $150,000 or $50,000, whatever it is what services are going to be losing for the town, on the town side and on the Board of Education side. So my recommendation to Steve and to Jim is either cut as little as possible or nothing. Because we're already at a very lean budget. It's very tough. Listen, my taxes went up too. My wife's out of work. We're skimming the top of the pond right now too, just like everybody else. But I don't want to see my daughter's education get cut by. She's still a junior. I still worry about next year. And I worry about him for next year and your kids, and that's why I'm on the Board of Ed. I'm not there just for, believe me, there's no glory on being in the Board of Ed. There's no glory about it whatsoever. Being a volunteer in this town is hell. You know? Okay, so that, and I'm doing it because I want to see what's best for this town. So just take that into consideration. So thank you both, and thank you everybody for coming tonight.
And before we have another thing too, another misconception is nobody's moving into this town. Now I'm looking at my personal plow truck driver, Kenny Tatora. His father lives right down the street from me. Ken, how many new families, when you drive up and down to see your dad, how many new families do you see?
8 to 10.
Yeah, and all of them have 2 to 3 kids. So, I mean, people are moving to this town. They're moving in for a lot of different reasons. I'm hoping it's education. But enrollment's decreasing everywhere, and we all know it. That people are moving out of the state, not just Monroe. And foreclosures are up, all over the state, not just Monroe. So those little things kind of irk me, but I want to thank Ken for my personal plow truck driving. All right, Amy, you're out. In?
Whole list of notes, and Mr. Augustine covered almost everything I wanted to say. So,
Sorry.
But a few things I did want to add. I'm Amy Premier from the Board of Ed, and I've been to these meetings years and years and years as a parent. Now I'm a sitting Board of Ed member, so it's really interesting to see things from the other side. A few things I did want to point out about this year's budget. I'm a big numbers person. I've been looking at the last 4 years as a parent and a Board of Education member. I'm looking at it from the Board of Ed side. If you look at our numbers for the last 4 years, we had a 0%, a 0%. Last year was under 2%, and right now we're standing at 1.6, looking at a cut. If you average that out over 4 years, we're well under the rate of inflation. That means we're moving backwards. Everything costs more every year. If we continue to have these cuts, we will not continue to have schools of distinction and schools of excellence. It simply cannot be sustained when you do not have the money to pay your bills. If you have 27, 28 kids in a class, which is what happens when you have the staff cuts that Mr. Augustine is going to have to do if we sustain a larger cut, there's no time for a teacher to give that personal attention to a student. The other thing I wanted to mention was Mr. Augustine talked about how he has gone through the budget line by line. The Board of Finance, the Town Council, the Board of Ed, we've all gone through the budget dozens and dozens of hours. And one thing that I hear at these meetings every year, and hasn't happened in the past, Mr. Shapiro, you've said it many times, and one thing I want to point out for sure this year is that Mr. Augustine hasn't just gone through the budget and given it 1%, 2% over last year's number. He went through this budget this year and went back to the actuals from not just last year, but the last 3 years. Did averages, looked at what we actually spent, not what we proposed to spend, but what we actually spent. In some cases, that meant he discontinued funding because we didn't need those line items anymore. In other cases, he severely decreased what we had been spending because we weren't spending what we had budgeted. So those actuals, that's where this budget, it is transparent. It is what we need. If we continue to cut it further, we will cause damage to a system that is good, and we want to keep it good. So my recommendation to you, Mr. Vavrick, is the same as Mr. Gutman's. It is no cuts to the Board of Ed. If you do choose to cut, please make it a small one. Thank you.
Alan Veclavello, Board of Education. Mr. Vavrick asked the Board of Ed to come in with a very fiscally responsible budget and very lean, and I think we delivered. We used contract negotiations, new energy savings, and other cost containment strategies. A lot of stuff I wanted to say was covered by Mr. Augustine. So, you know, one of the things I hear a lot is why does the Board of Ed budget keep going up when we have declining enrollment? But like Mr. Augustine pointed out, you know, we did cut 34 teachers since 2005, and this year we're eliminating 4 more teachers. But, you know, the expenses keep going up. We have unfunded mandates, energy costs. When we went to Common Core, that costs money. We had to buy new textbooks, professional development, new materials for the students to use in the classrooms because we're switching curriculum. It was also mentioned, you know, a lot of people are upset about the movement of some of the department heads to administrative positions. But, you know, that was another state mandate. It was the teacher evaluation model, which the state mandates that each teacher be evaluated 6 times per year, and we didn't have enough administrators to cover that. So that was an additional expense. In terms of, you know, cutting staff, you know, that's what we're looking at now, and when we increase class size, that's not a good thing because that means less teacher attention and more students fall behind, and when more students fall behind, that's an additional expense because we have to pay for compensatory education, special education costs will go up. And schools of distinction, we have Massac, Monroe Elementary, and like Mr. Vavrick says, we want to move forward, not backwards. We want to keep, you know, keep the good things going with the schools of distinction. You know, in terms of cuts, it's not looking good. We're looking at, you know, a lot of people say, well, be creative. Well, I think if there's something creative in the budget, I find it hard to believe the Board of Finance wouldn't have found that creativity and cut it out. But, you know, right now what we're looking at is guidance counselors, special ed staff cuts, library media specialists, increasing pay to play. You know, it's a very lean budget, and now we're cutting in the staff. So, Mr. Vavrick, in conclusion, I would just say what the other 2 board members said. You know, hopefully no cut, but if you're going to make a cut, make it very minimal. Thank you.
Okay, town council, I got a call from JP today. He is an EMS supervisor down in Stratford, and he got called in, he's working until 11, so unfortunately he won't be here tonight. Gave me no comment to say. We are missing a few people, I assume due to work, but we do have 2 town council members, Deb Heim and Dee Martin. Whoever wants to go first, come on up to the mic.
Dee Martin, Town Council. I don't particularly have anything new to add to this dialogue. It's an old dialogue that we've had too many times. A few thoughts. I think voters come out and vote when it's something that affects them. If you have kids in school, then possibly that's your big concern. If you're a senior, you hope that the senior center has more programs or more senior assistants or something. If you got a pothole in front of your house, then you want the bonding or the road work done. You want the roads taken care of. So I think people vote yes or no and how it affects them, personally. Somehow or other, we have to impress on people that this budget does affect you personally, each and every individual in the community. And one of the ways I think we have to do that is by explaining consequences. Mr. Augustine has done this evening, there will be consequences to cuts. Some people may be perfectly happy with that, but that has to be made public, what would be lost if and when reductions are made in the budget. As a town council member, we do not examine the Board of Education side, as you well know, but I think most of us are aware of it, and I personally believe that that is a good budget there. On the town side, just a few random thoughts to look at. I would like you to go, not that you have not probably, but publicly, to go back and look through departments, see where departments have spent up to this point, if there's appears to be an area where if we've used a number in the past, we may not need that much this year. Maybe some pieces of that can be chipped away. And I would ask you again to look at the road paving to see if the bonding numbers are not horrible, if some money that we budgeted for bonding or for roads could be moved into bonding, if that wasn't diluted by whatever the bonding costs are. Those are just, two thoughts that I have from the town side. Thank you.
Ms. Martin brings up a couple good points. Once this budget goes down, I know Ms. Yeager's sitting there, and I know Chief Salvatore was sitting there, and I know Mike and I have drilled down into a lot of different things. Most of the line items in the current budget are zero or below where they were in the past. There are a couple that have had one up, obviously. But one thing I did was, even down to DPW, I went down. You should really take a look at it. You're looking at buildings. You should really look at the deplorable conditions these guys got to work in. When we got the new building, I said, well, maybe we can. I thought the bus barn was bigger than it was, so I went down there and looked at everything. Right now, these guys are sleeping all over the place. Some people are sleeping in their trucks. They deserve a place to be. That bus barn, I'm going to split it up. You can't do that. So I asked about other things. You can't do it. Barb, I checked with Ms. Yeager about the senior center, about closing their one Wednesday night, and it's $3,000-$4,000. To cut a Wednesday night thing that's providing programs to the people, and people have this misconceptions about the seniors voting no. Go to the senior center. Talk to the seniors that are using those things. They're not voting no. 95% of them are voting yes. It's the people that don't use the services, like Ms. Martin said, and right on. When do we have an emergency? When there's a pothole or a tree down, or God forbid the grass isn't cut for a major game. That's when we have the major problems. I went to the library to see if we can cut out maybe, they have hours from I think 8 till 8 o'clock on Monday through Wednesday. That would save $35,000. But that $35,000 savings would result in programs being cut for people who are either underemployed, out of work, networking programs, youth programs that they don't get in the schools because you cut it out. And over 10,000 people use those programs for 3 nights. So are you gonna cut your nose off to spite your face? It'll lower taxes, but where are those people gonna go that are underemployed or out of work? Where are those kids gonna go if schools can't have a program? I can't do that. That's not me, and I'm not gonna get into the election thing. But I get very passionate about not doing something like that. I even asked, what is the slowest day in the library? The slowest day in the library is Thursday. We close it for Thursday. You know how much that's gonna cost? 10 grand. I was talking to a mom the other day that is out of a job. She's going for a nursing program. She spends 6 to 8 hours there. She has to do it every day. She's also working a part-time job, also has 2 kids, and her husband left her. She's voting yes to the budget because she wants the library open. She's voting yes to the budget because when her babysitter comes in, they go to the park. They're going to be going to the pool. I take this personally because it's our town. So, sorry for going on. Deb Hine.
Deb Hine, Town Council. I think a lot of the stuff has been said already. I think, Steve, I think we should get out what is being actually cut, because I had a lot of people come to me thinking that nothing was cut, that the same budget, what's 1%, what's this, what's that. To get out there to what exactly was being cut, because a lot of people were like, what was exactly cut? And to get that out there beforehand, what services are being cut and how it's going to affect the town or whatever. Another thing is, I know a lot of people are voting out because they can't make ends meet, but at the same time, we don't want to cut services because those, like you said, need those services, and those are the ones who probably use the service the most. You know, the taxpayers spoke. I think it should be a nominal cut, but I think it should be out there what exactly is being cut, and for if, you know, what things are going to affect them. Like you said, that you looked into these and, you know, what the impact is going to be on these people. Because I don't think, you know, you could sit there and say this and this and this, and I want to, but the impact that it's going to cost the people, they don't realize until the impact has already happened. And like the Board of Education, and the questions, if you have any questions, please contact anybody, that, because a lot of misconceptions are out there. And I know I sat in meetings, and a lot of people here sat at meetings, it's the same people, but it's not the people who are voting, and those misconceptions get out there. And contact somebody, you know, just don't listen to somebody who has never attended a meeting or had no idea, because it's half the time it's not true. So please ask somebody who could get you the information. Thank you.
Mr. Lito just walked in. Town Council, you're up.
Excellent timing.
Yes, it was.
Grant Lito, Town Council. It's unfortunate I wasn't able to hear what was said prior, so I don't want to repeat too much, but and I'm sure my comments will, you know, were probably already said, but I would reiterate my position last time. Again, I don't think the cuts were substantial enough based upon the word of the voters at the first referendum. As I said last time, I think the cut needed to be substantial enough to get the number under 2. I think that number was about $350,000 last time. I think we came in a little bit less than that. Unfortunately, I think the cuts need to be more aggressive. I'll echo the comments that I'd like to see the very lean school budget not affected. I think Superintendent did a great job bringing that in along with the Board of Finance and making sure that was lean. But the unfortunate reality is cuts need to come from somewhere. That is a substantial, super substantial portion of our budget, and I think all areas need to be looked at. And I do think that number, working off of the last budget, needed to be 350 or more. So I think you still have some work to do. I would like to see as many services as possible retained, but the reality is council worked very hard to try to limit the increases in personnel, increases in a lot of raises. We kept a lot of those, almost all those positions stable. So I think the only place you have left to look are, unfortunately, some of the services that are being provided. We talked last time that not everybody in town uses all of the services. You know, the numbers were a lot better this time around, but and while it was a very close margin, it still was a no vote. So, you know, I think you have a difficult job. I don't envy your job in trying to find the best place to cut. I don't think there is a best place to cut because I believe in the budget the first time around. But again, we have to respect the word of the voters, and I think that, you know, as I said last time, I think you need to make significant cuts so we're not continuing to appear to the public that there's money out there that can be cut very easily. I know none of your decisions have been easy, and I know they're not going to be easy, but I think the unfortunate conditioning of this town, I've lived here my whole life, has been that there's some kind of shell game being played the entire time with the budget based upon prior administrations. And I know that you've been very successful during your administration getting budgets passed early and often. I think there's a great team in place on all of the elected boards, Finance, Council, and Board of Ed. So again, I want to get it out there that from what we've seen, the amount of detail and the level of drilling down that Finance has done and all the protective boards have done is we've poured over the budget, and there really is no fat in there. So what's going to be cut are essential services. I think people need to know that. Again, I want to reiterate that I commend you for doing a great job and really taking out the fat before it goes out to the referendum. So I think part of this process is really getting the word out to recondition the town of Monroe that it's not the same as it was 10 years ago. I also agree with Ms. Heim. I think it's an excellent point that it is a little bit difficult when the budget comes out again to understand where the cuts were made. So if you could make that clear through your many ways of contacting the town residents, then I think that'd be good. But again, I think that number needs to be, at least another 175,000 or more to get that number to where we are. And wish you luck again.
And on that, and I'll let the Board of Finance talk. As far as the services being cut, again, I can't consciously not give them a new building. I can't continue, then I even try to fix their building. I can't cut services for seniors that, they have to pay into to get to. Not all the services are free. They have to pay into that. And when they're there, I go there a lot, and I go there just for peace of mind. But I can't cut library hours when I see a mom that can't work. I can't cut out nights when I see people underemployed. I can't morally do it. So anyway, Board of Finance, Mike.
Hello again. Mike Mangios, Board of Finance. Again, we've been doing this for a while. As Jim alluded to, we started up back in October. I do want to commend the Board of Ed for everything we read and hear about it. It's a very tight budget. We've been through it a million times. We've been through a lot of things. I think the thing that I've mentioned before is this is a responsible budget. There are costs in this budget that have gone up. The biggest ones that we look at are long-term costs. There are employees who have had contracts approved. Town council approves contracts. The contracts are in place. The Board of Finance then has to make sure the contracts are funded. So the Board of Ed has new contracts on their side that are considerably higher than their increase they're asking for. So obviously they've made cuts in other places. Our long-term pension costs on the town side are up 24%. So start doing the math. Pension costs are up 24%. Medical is estimated to go up 10%. And we just had a 2.4 something % increase rejected. So things have to go because we have to fund our pension long term, or we just kick the can down the road to our children. We have to pay our medical bills. So as these long-term fixed costs go up, other things have to go. The Board of Ed has done a great job. In a declining environment, it's very difficult to do, but heads have to go, and they've done that. And that's why the increase is at the level it's in, and it's at a very good level. The town side is more difficult because, again, we don't have declining services that people are expecting. We have the same amount of people to take care of. We have the same amount of people. There are many unions who expect to get increases, and rightfully so, they deserve increases. Those increases cost money. The town needs to budget those increases. We have budgeted those increases, which is why we have to see these numbers going up. So there are no easy fixes here. We are in the process of trying to control our long-term costs, which is probably why our friends are here, because difficult changes have to be made. They don't happen overnight is the problem. They can't be fixed tomorrow, they can't be fixed tonight, but the long-term model that has run municipal finance over the last 30 years doesn't work in a non-growth environment. We are a flat town right now, we're not growing. Very few towns in Connecticut are growing. So what we've got to do is address long-term costs, and that takes time. So where does that leave us today? To me, the last referendum was actually pretty good. We had lost by 28 votes, and I say we because we put a lot of time into this. You have a town that has a considerable amount of divergent opinions. We have a big part of the town who supports education dramatically. We have a big part of the town who would not accept anything but a zero increase. So we took a divergent town and we came up with almost exactly the same amount of people on each side. which means to me we're pretty darn close. We are never going to please all the people because we've got people that are coming from considerably different backgrounds and have considerably different interests at stake. So I don't think we have to look at this and say, yes, it lost. We have to change it dramatically because it lost very close, which means we're right about there. That being said, I'm a believer in it got voted down, you have to cut it. It's just the way it is. It was the vote of the town. It went down, so an adjustment has to be made. I would like to see something in the 100 to 150,000 range overall. Bring it down. It'll get us right around a 2% mill rate increase. Hopefully a 199, but something right around that neighborhood is about what it'll take to get there. I would like to see a minimal of it come out of the Board of Ed, somewhere 30 to 50,000 out of bond. We can take out of the Board of Ed. I think we have to because it is the majority of the budget. I think we can squeeze a little bit on debt service because rates have been holding. And again, part of the things that Board of Finance spends a lot of time doing is we have to make predictions of what things are going to cost a year from now. So, one of the calculations we make is what are interest rates going to be on the bonding we do in a year? It's a guess. We make an educated guess based on returns and what the numbers are. So we're going to tweak that calculation slightly. There's a couple other areas where we can squeeze a little bit, but my opinion is to keep it right in that neighborhood. We'll make a small adjustment. I said 100 to 150 in case you wanted to hear. But you probably knew that already because we've already talked about it. I think we can also take $25,000 out of contingency. It's not ideally what we want to do because, again, there's a lot of things that come up over the year that we don't have plans for. Again, we're budgeting for things over a year from now. The winter we just went through is going to kill us. Legal kills us. There are plenty of things that are not controllable on a year-out basis, so we need to have a contingency built in. We've made it transparent this year as required by the charter, and we're trying to do that, but I think we can tighten that down 25 grand, and it's, again, not something we'll see services hurt. I think the other thing would, be aware of is, I hear it all the time, I read it all the time, well, we're entering bad contracts, we're doing this and that long-term. We're not. We are going through contracts, every one as they come up, and I think every one of the unions will tell you that concessions have been made, and they had to be made because, again, we're long-term costs of getting there. Adjustments have been made, medical co-pays have been changed, policies have been changed, because long-term, these are the things that affect the budget. And we're not going to see huge growths like we did 30 years ago. We're going to see the same areas, so these little tweaks, when I get these big jumps, it really throws a monkey wrench into the budgeting process. Because that money that goes into pension this year, at 24% increase, that means something else goes away. And it's that simple. So there are cuts that have been made already. There's not a lot of extra fluff because the fixed costs are being funded. Now, years back, those costs were just ignored. When the budgeted funding went up, sometimes it wasn't funded, which just means the next year, the next year, and the next year it gets worse. So yes, we are paying for mistakes that weren't fully funded a decade ago, absolutely. We will not do that. We have a great Board of Finance. We have a great town council who gets the long-term costs. And nobody on the Board of Finance is going to support not fully funding our obligations. That's just the way it has to be. So other things may have to go, but that stuff we have to fund. So that's all I got. Thank you.
It's my turn. Sure. Deborah Duchess, now Board of Finance. I've also been doing this for about 15 years. I've also been doing it since October, actually all year round. I also have been lovingly called Double Digit Debbie for my years on Board of Finance, Board of Education, and I will tell you that it probably put us into a position so that now when we come in with these lean budgets, they are true to the numbers that are required. I was on Board of Education when 3 participants took part in an HSA, had no idea what it was, learned all about it, and now that is part of every contract, and every participant is part of an HSA. Greatly, greatly reduced medical costs there. I've been out to bid, I've been through contract negotiations, I've seen it from town council now, and now I was liaison to Board of Finance for a number of years, and now sitting on Board of Finance. I will tell you, same thing everybody else has. We worked very hard on this, but the reality is, when I was on Board of Ed, it went out the door on January 9th, and it wasn't our budget until there was one more yes vote. When it came back to us, whatever the number was, we educated our students, and we educated them extremely well and have outstanding schools. Having said that, on the town side, we're often questioned on bonding. Bonding is, to a town, in my opinion, no more than deciding that you're going to mortgage your home, and you're going to decide to mortgage your home for 30 years, or 15 years, or 10 years. It is a big purchase. It's a big piece of your life. And if you're going to do renovations or major roof repairs, you're going to take out a home equity loan, or you're going to remortgage. Unfortunately, that's the way big projects are done. So, I believe, because roads are meant to last for a good 20 years, and some of ours have to last a lot longer than that, and that whatever degree of work is done is to ensure that they last 20 years, I believe that we should move some of our expense for roads into our bonding. I think it is farsighted to recognize that we have, as was pointed out by my chairman, we have 3 years to use the bonded money. So if we run into a situation where the storms are overwhelming and we can't complete a road, bonded money is there to complete the roads. And we can get onto a cycle, which we are supposed to see by the end of this month, and we will understand that a little bit better. I agree that some money should come out of contingency. I believe there is some money in wage adjustments that could be reduced minimally. I would look for a reduction. I'm not going to specifically suggest a reduction to the Board of Education at this time, but I would like to see a reduction of $250,000. No,
Oh, total. Okay.
off the budget.
Okay.
Thanks.
Before we go to the other finance members, Chairman Trump from the Board of Education, you can come down and state your position. That is you, right? When I was coming down, I didn't mean to get up during Mr. Manjos. I'm having a little cramping problem. I have fluids in my body.
I was boring you.
No, I talk to you all the time anyway. But unfortunately, as you get older, you get these medical conditions.
Sorry, bad traffic. I agree with a lot of what Ms. Dutch just said until she got to the end. But I would agree that, in fact, we've had this discussion before, that there's been so many great improvements in terms of our financing, our tools, and our ability to track and monitor our finances and where our money goes. And it was amazing to us how quickly and how transparently we were able to get our budget out this year. And in the lack of a lot of hoo-ha in the community in terms of where we were at with our budget and the budget that went out to the public. So I was quite surprised when it went down the first time, and even more surprised when it went down the second time. But I would agree with what I just said, that the information that we put out there was a realistic budget in terms of what we needed just to maintain our existing programs. With the reduction that came off the first referendum, it took out some of the items that we felt that we needed for this year. But if we were to take any more out of our budget, it would cut into our programs. So I would suggest, Mr. Vavrick, that we send this thing back out as is, particularly on the Board of Education side. I couldn't speak to the town side.
Thank you, sir.
Sure.
Thanks for hustling back. John Jett.
Ted Quinlan, Board of Finance. I would echo what everything has been saying here, is that this budget is a well put together, professionally prepared budget by the Board of Education and by the town. We on the Board of Finance, and I can't talk to what Town Council and Board of Ed talk about. What we on the Board of Finance are 6 professional financial individuals who have looked over and asked thousands of questions to get to what we consider to be the best budget for the town. We have immense respect for Mr. Augustine and the budget that he puts together and the transparency with which he prepares his budgets. We volunteer boards, I believe, have done our job in beating this to death and bringing it down to a level that is roughly half of what inflation is. Now we as voters have a responsibility to do our job. If we want to live in this town, we have to pay for what it costs to live in this town at half of the inflation rate. We have a responsibility to our town, to our children, to the infrastructure, and to our property values. Penny wise, pound foolish, cutting back will hurt services, it will hurt education, it will hurt our property values. 2 years ago, I lost my job in this town, not in this town, but I consulted and scrapped to support my family, and finally found a job at a 30% pay cut. But I've never voted to not support my town, because my children and my family and my home are more important than the 30% pay cut that I lost. This is a budget that on the Board of Finance was supported 100% bipartisan. We disagreed on separate line items, but when it came to areas in the budget, major areas of the budget, it was always a 6-0 vote. I do not believe that we need to cut anything over $100,000. If we took $140,000 out and we closed the gap by roughly 200 votes, and if we're down to 28 votes, I believe something in the $50,000 to $75,000 range. I do not believe a penny of that should come from the Education Department. And I suggest that we take the money out of roads, move it from the operating expense to bonds. $50,000, $100,000 on $2 million combined spend is insignificant to the bonding. It will save us whatever that number is, whatever number you choose, $50,000 to $100,000 will reduce the operating expenses. No services will be impacted. We are at a point where cuts impact services, and those services are needed by everybody. And by the way, we're bonding less. So when we say let's bond, we paid more off in bonding this year than we are recommending that we fund next year. So that's all I have to say.
And I got to thank Mr. Quinlan for that, because that was one of the things, by somebody who used to be quite vocal also, that we're bonding more than we could have. It's completely opposite. We've lowered our debt limit. I mean, I can't say anything more about the lies and distortions, but if the press is picking this up, you know, we're doing a great job across the board bipartisanly. John?
John Ostraszewski, Board of Finance. I'm not going to belabor the time everyone's already contributed here coming out to listen and to voice their opinions on this. I think the budget that went out the first time was a very good budget. It was sound. It had been reviewed very well by numerous people, both Board of Finance, Board of Ed, and Jim Agostine and his staff, Steve Vavrick and his staff. There wasn't a lot of fluff or anything that could be easily cut without starting to impact services. By going out and voting no, people don't realize that it may cause the budget that comes out next time to cut a service that they value. Because there really is not a lot in there that can get cut without taking away services. So my only recommendation would be to tweak the contingency a little bit, as it was already said, and to tweak the roads, move from operating into bonding, so that we can continue to repair what needs to get repaired here and not impact any services to the people of Monroe. Thank you.
And before I let the public talk, I'd be remiss if I didn't talk about the people who put this budget together. You got Gabby de Blasi out there, which is the Board of Finance, the financial director, just last time too, financial director of the Board of Education. But people on the town side, you know, both Heidi Mead and Carl Tonchek, they don't get overtime, but you come in on a Saturday, you come in late Fridays, you come in anytime, and they're there. I've gotten emails from Miss Mead at like 4 o'clock in the morning. Hey, can we do this? What do you think about that? We have a dedicated staff in this building. Sometimes people don't understand how hard some of these people work. Being here for 5 years, I definitely see who comes in on weekends. I definitely see who's here late with me. And we got a great crew, so when people say cut people out, you know, that's a service too. So I'm a little, you know, again, I get passionate about what we're going to do here. So we're going to look at a lot of different ways, but now it's time to hear from the public. And again, this is input. This is informational. It won't be a give and take or whatever. But public, just come up, state your name. We'll try to limit to 3 minutes, but what the heck, we're here for a budget, so let's just not go crazy. Carlos, how you doing?
Good, Steve. Hi, I'm Carlos De Silva. I live on Elm Street. As Steve knows, I've been in Monroe for a good amount of time. I've seen my taxes go up almost 7-fold over the years. My kids got a decent education that I can't complain. I definitely don't want to take away from the upcoming generation of kids, or anybody else for that matter. My case is, yeah, I've lost a good job, long-term job, but I have to live with it. I do have a couple questions. I see the teachers have suffered. They lost their jobs. The town seems to be pounding on their heads and keeping their raises at about 1%. And everybody else in town, the police department, the public workers, and so forth. I did bother, I haven't been at these meetings in a long time. You know, I did it years and years ago when an outside consultancy outfit came in and suggested that we should build an extra school because we were going to get a major influx of students in there, and unfortunately that didn't occur. And in a way, it was a blessing in disguise that we did get it. We were able to help our neighbors fulfill their need and despair. Other mistakes, buzzing routes. And you get these outfits from the outside, they come in and they turn around and says, well, you should do this and this and this. We're paying them a good amount of money. And I've had to come into town because my kid, I live less than a mile from the school, and yet they were telling me I had to buzz them all the way across town, and my neighbors behind me were going less than a mile. I did one at that time. I hope you do understand me. I am a little immigrant. But by looking at the budget, and I don't mean to pick at you or anybody else involved in it, but I've noticed mainly because the Board of Ed budget is the largest chunk of it. Your office, it shows on the line, I'm not sure whether it covers your pay or the whole office, an increase of over 4%. The principal's an increase of over 2-point-some% over last year's budget. The regular teachers are 0.81%, special ed teachers 2.9%. And I've noticed the last 3-year contracts at the school board, they average, I think the regular teachers increase was 3.25% over 3 years. And yet the salaries of the teachers are the biggest lump. I'm not sure what yours is. I probably wish I could do it, but it's irrelevant. That's not the case. But I do see these increases going up. And the teachers, okay, you lay off regular teachers, you pound on their heads, for that percentage, that 1%, but yet you're still showing 0.81%, 0.9% on those line items. There's also another 2 line items, and I wasn't able to find out exactly what they stand for. I assume that occasionally you do have to go out and consult. And 2 of those line items, one is for $300,000 and some odd thousand, and the other one is $900,000 and some odd thousand. That's a That's over $1.25 million. What are those services for? Some special services that you go outside. I mean, normally, I'm a salesman, and, I've been a salesman for a long time, and I try to negotiate my best deals. I was able to cut my fuel bill by 30%. I could drop, my thermostat at home by 2 degrees. You'd be surprised. I don't suggest you go out and split wood to heat up your buildings, but, it's a good exercise. I need to stay in shape. But that's some of the areas that I feel that it might be worth looking at. That if you're going to go outside, to outside consultants for the Board of Ed or anybody else in town, squeeze them a bit. Because to be honest with you, Steve mentioned briefly, he says, underpaid. My pay I dropped over 50%. Concessions, the teachers have had concessions, and believe me, I've had major concessions because I had to learn how to do it, but I cannot, for the life of me, I'm not getting any younger. There's age discrimination like there's no tomorrow, whether you're qualified or not. They'd rather hire some younger individual. So I know I'm closer to Social Security, but if the rates keep on going up the way they are, the tax that I pay will be greater than the mortgage will be paid. So I'm still in a major hole. It's compounding. At least, with the mortgage, I see the end of it, and I know that taxes, unfortunately, I won't see the end of it as long as I live. But I honestly believe that if you look at those, it's questionable. When I look at your office budget going up over 4%, I'm not sure if you benefited, anybody else has benefited. I look at the office staff under the Board of Ed Finance. Their increase went up 5.35%. Now you're giving the teachers 1% on the average. And yet the budget shows for the special ed teachers 2.9%. My simple bookkeeping mind, which is not that simple, it raises little alarms. It says, well, we tight. But, it's hard to sell, at least to me, saying, okay, you take the pay cut, but I'm giving myself a raise. I have a hard time swallowing that, and with that, I'll pass. Thanks.
And I will say that Carlos is one of the best damn handymen, so if you need him, he's a good guy. My neighbor for at least 10 years here.
Good evening, Chris Roberto, Hillside Lane, Monroe. I'd like to just rise tonight in support of the budget. I think that all our town officials, be it elected or volunteers, do a very good job. And the people of the town have to get out and vote, and that's why we're having the problems that we're having. Just one quick thought that I think probably would be able to alleviate a lot of the pressure is legal fees that the town is spending. And I know there are some things that can't be avoided, but there are some that can, and I would just like to get some consideration on that. Thank you.
Steve Kirsch, Applegate Lane. I'm going to say what I've said before. Tweak it, don't cut it. You're not going to guess at any right number because there isn't. I've done the research. I have a concern, even when I say that, because it goes to something Mr. Lito said. He said people are conditioned to think this is a shell game. Part of the reason they're conditioned is because you put out a budget, you talk great about it, everybody talks great about it, and as soon as the votes no, you cut it. And then you say, well, now we're going to give you a good budget. And when it goes down, you cut it. And so people are trained. I did not come to this town from a town where you voted on a referendum. And all of a sudden I found that if I vote yes the first time, I'm expected to vote yes the second and the third, because if I don't, it's only going to be worse. And I'm really getting to the point where if you and the other members who put out this budget, and I thought the first one was a good budget, aren't willing to stand up and say to the citizens, no, we're not going to continue to cut. We're not going to take an additional amount of money out of education and have them going out and cutting staff. If you can find things to tweak, if you want to take a little less out of contingency, okay, I buy it. I buy tweaks. But we've got to stop the cuts because you're simply reinforcing the belief that there's fat. So having said that, second, there is a problem with the document that's on the website. The Board of Education budget detail line items do not match the document that's on the Board of Ed website. It is one of the reasons that it is one of the reasons that there's some confusion about the energy cost lines. Before the meeting tonight, I was told, go look at the Board of Ed's approved document on their website, and I did during this meeting, and it is different than the detail section. The account detail section is different in the document that's posted on the town's website as part of this compared to what the education system.
Right now is the original budget.
Yes, it is the original December.
I'm watching our IT person right now, so hopefully.
So you have to, I mean, that obviously has to go within your big document, but that is there. And so that's really my comments. Thank you.
And it's a very good point that he brings up, and part of the reason I believe is because the cuts that have been made along the ways, and the cuts that we make to Board of Ed and you make to Board of Ed, don't go to a specific line item until the Board of Ed approves it. So people are looking at this saying, well, it's still there. Well, we've cut it, but we should have it. We can't make a line item adjustment on the Board of Education. Only the Board of Education can make a line item adjustment.
It's simply a reduction.
It's simply a reduction.
I didn't know that even the update was.
So when you go into the detail, you see that, oh, we're still spending that money. They're not. It's just some people are misinformed with that, but it is understandable.
Again, this is more of an educational life for everybody, and see, that's just the courage.
Right. That's,
you know, we can definitely. This was. I mean, I was reading the Courier today because I was waiting for this meeting, and I was told I can't advocate for this budget. I'll go to jail before I stop advocating for this budget. It's a great budget we put together. You're hearing it tonight. If anybody out there wants to say that I'm using town resources, that's communication. I'm not here to get facts out there. So, as everybody here knows, I do push the envelope a tad too much sometimes, but I'm a passionate person about cutting services. None of us want to cut services. None of us ever want to cut services. Matter of fact, I want to add services, and we're doing it with less than we've ever done before. So, yes, I can't say vote yes legally, but I am advocating for a great budget, for a great team that we put together. Anybody else?
Pete Delmastro, 170 Bagburn Road. I was born and raised in this town. I moved back about 4 years ago, and I don't mind paying taxes, I really don't. But I'm looking at this in the long term, where my taxes have gone over the past 4 years. It's getting out of hand as far as it just seems like they're snowballing. And I look at what I paid last year, the year before, and you keep adding this dollars up, and I'm going to be out of my tax budget in maybe 5 years. Where we don't have kids, I don't use any of the. I don't have any kids. I don't use any of the town parks. I don't use anything. Me and my wife stay at home. We do whatever, our own little thing. I don't complain about my road. It's a little raggedy. I don't care. Keeps the taxes down, that's fine. And it's cut wherever we can. That's all I'm asking. That's all. I mean, raises, teachers, public works, police, fire, whatever, that doesn't bother me at all. It's just, I'm looking at the bottom line as far as longevity, where I am now, where I'm going to be in 5 years, and my tax bill, that's all.
When did you move back?
Well, we built our own house, so we actually helped the town. It was a vacant lot, and we built our own house. So over the past 4 years, we've actually helped the town, and we're not getting that. That's the other thing. We're not getting nothing out of it. I'm not asking for nothing out of it. I'm just asking for not lower taxes, but the best we could do as far as paying taxes. So that's,
How was the process, building the house?
I never do it again. I don't have to, I'm too old. Thank you, that's all I'm asking for, that's all.
Anybody else? Nobody else? Once, twice? I guess we're adjourning. Thank you all for your input.
Yeah.